Taken at the Flood is a Christie novel from 1948, but it takes place between 1944 and 1946. The kind of preamble or introductory chapters of the novel take place in 44 during the war, and then the rest of the novel deals with issues right after the war, and this whole era of Reconstruction plays a significant role in the novel, which is unusual for Christie, who kind of, with the exception of maybe 1-2 Buckle My Shoe and N or M, kind of steers clear of talking too much about the war. So that it makes for a very interesting backdrop. I'm just going to read you kind of what Wikipedia does for its introduction to the novel, because it's kind of a complex plot, and I think that this would kind of encapsulate it pretty well. While visiting the Coronation Club during an air raid alarm in 1944, Hercule Poirot hears Major Porter talking about Gordon Claude, who has been killed along with almost his entire household during the Blitz. He's been survived only by his young widow Rosaline and her brother. But there is a complication. Apparently, Porter knew Robert Underhay, the widow's first husband, in Africa, and remembers his suggesting that he would deliberately disappear in order to set her free from the marriage without the shame of a divorce. Before his disappearance, Underhay joked that he would subsequently adopt the name Enoch Arden. And Enoch Arden is the title of a poem by Tennyson that has a similar theme of a man who goes away to work to support his family. He is gone so long that he's presumed dead. When he does return, Enoch comes to find that his wife is remarried and they have another child together. So this theme of coming back becomes an important one in the novel. Overhearing the same anecdote, Gordon's older brother Jeremy, who's also in the club listening to Porter and Poirot, Gordon's older brother Jeremy storms out angrily. 2 years later, in 1946, it's after the war, Poirot is visited by Catherine Claude, who wishes him to investigate the whereabouts of Robert Underhay, evidently with a view to breaking the will. What has happened is Gordon Claude's entire family has grown dependent on him because he was a man of some wealth, and he took very good care of them. When he married this young woman and died without a will in the bombing during the Blitz, all of the money went to Rosaline and her brother. And the family all want to get it back. So they've heard about this Robert Underhay, and by finding Robert Underhay, of course, they can prove that Rosaline is that her marriage to Gordon is illegal, and therefore she would not inherit. So quite a complex plot, and of course then the theme becomes really, I think the main theme of this novel is one of inheritance. And inheritance takes place on several levels. First of all, there's the obvious financial inheritance. All of the Claude family members heavily relied on Gordon for money, and when he died intestate, they were no longer having access to this money. And Rosaline is a very kind of simple sort of character, and her brother completely takes over her life, and he's kind of a resentful young man. He doesn't belong to the same class as the Claudes by any means. He's working class, just like Rosaline is, and he's out to protect his sister, and he believes that this family doesn't deserve the money anymore, and that it's Rosaline and his. He's a bit of a rake. Now, without giving too much of the plot away, I will say that the money, in the end, this financial question is resolved, and the Claudes once again are able to inherit. But I give this bit of information because I think that it's important in understanding Christie as a social conservative, someone who very much believes in the British class system, that this family, they deserve this money because they keep it in the family, and they belong to the class that should preserve this family and financial heritage. Other instances of inheritance, I would say there's kind of a spiritual or an emotional inheritance that happens. This is post-war era for most of the novel, and while you would think that this would be a positive time, a time of boom, of growth, hey, we're still seeing demolished buildings. We're still seeing ration cards and ration booklets. We're still seeing people who once had servants now having to do their own shopping, having to wait in line for hours to get a piece of fish. But what I'm getting at with this inheritance is that you've got people who are displaced. You've got people who don't feel connected anymore to their social class, to their families. One of the main characters in the novel, Lynn Marchmont, she has been in the service overseas, volunteering while her fiance has worked on his farm raising crops for the war effort. She comes back and she feels very different. Now, Poirot, in talking about this idea of inheritance, Christie explores psychology, and Poirot's belief is that no, people don't change. Really, circumstances bring out who they really are. Lynn, who has returned from the war and is no longer sure she wants to marry this man, she's always been a restless person. That she's always kind of one of these people who is more at home, or kind of would rather be where she's not. And once she gets there, she'd rather be where she was. So she's kind of this displaced character. So that becomes a very important element in the story. The literary allusions are numerous. Of course, the title comes from a line from Shakespeare, from Julius Caesar. I'll read you the epigraph at the beginning that quotes from Brutus's speech. "There is a tide in the affairs of men, which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea we are now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose our venture." So what we have in this novel are people taking advantage of situations, of kind of riding the crest, and being able to, in wanting to kind of gain financially. And then we see the family all kind of in the shallows, who are unable to make do. They're having financial difficulties. We've got a lot of problems that each of the individual family members face. But Christie kind of turns the quote a little bit and says, well, yeah, that's nice that you can ride the crest like that and be taken at the flood, but it could get you out to sea and you could drown. It can be so overwhelming. And in fact, that does happen to a couple of characters. The other of literary allusion, of course, is the one to the Tennyson poem, Enoch Arden. But there are literary resonances going on through the novel. I think that a novel like this, which has no fewer than 3 really similar plot twists of kind of people pretending to be who they aren't, may seem a bit excessive to us, and it may seem like very, very unrealistic. Like, would this really happen in real life? But we have to look at where Christie's coming from. She's writing out of the tradition of Shakespeare, out of the tradition of Dickens. Certainly she's not writing great pieces of literature on those levels, but she's using some of the conventions. Shakespearean comedies contain a lot of coincidences, and we have to really suspend our disbelief. And even to a lesser degree, the same thing happens in a Dickens novel. So Christie's working out of this, and she uses it in quite a different way, not to make a social point, but she does it more, I would say, to explore psychology. People often blame Christie of having kind of cardboard cutout characters. Really, I think that she does this because she sees people in patterns. She comes from a psychological viewpoint that people repeat certain patterns, that people behave in specific ways based on certain aspects of their upbringing. So this becomes an exploration of psychology. Although the plot at the end gets very complex and it's a little convoluted, I still felt this was a great Poirot novel. It was a bit haunting in a couple of ways, and I would give it a 4.5 out of 5.